Need a new idea for a dinner party? Want a tasty treat for dinner? Or want a tasty treat for a sick loved one? Try soup. Try my grandmother's chicken tortellini soup recipe. For health nuts, it's pretty healthy. And this recipe is very near and dear to my heart because my grandmother brought it when she immigrated to America from Italy. Without further ado, let's get started. For this recipe, we're gonna need about 2 stalks of celery, 2 carrots, and 2 onions, down to the skin. Also, we're gonna want to use 2 pounds of chicken. Now, it can be any kind of chicken you want. You can use wing, meat, thigh, leg, breast, whatever. You can even use the gizzard. Wouldn't recommend it. But for this recipe, we're gonna use chicken thigh. Just because you can get a little bit more flavor out of it, and there's not that as many bones. Now, we're using freshly cut garlic, just a little bit fresher ingredients. Sea salt and pepper. For this recipe, we're going to be using chicken base, but you can also use chicken stock, but we're just going to use chicken base. And then finally, you're going to need 1 can of diced tomatoes. You're going to want diced tomatoes because cutting up the real thing is a little bit messy and hard to deal with. Now it's time to get into the nitty-gritty of this recipe. For this recipe, we're going to need about a 4.5 quart bowl, or 10 cups. Now this recipe will serve about 6 to 7 people, depending on how much you feed them. Well, let's get into the cutting of the vegetables. For the cutting of the vegetables, we're going to use a bench knife. It's a little bit safer and easier to use. You want to cut them up into big size pieces yet, although if you're going to leave them in there the entire way, you can cut them up into easier bite-sized pieces. Now we're going to repeat this step with the carrots. Okay, now it's time for the onions. And when you're cutting an onion, you want to make sure the tops are cut off. That way, so you can just slice it right down the middle. See, now you have 2 sides of an onion. Now, this will make it a lot easier cutting it up. Now, just cut. Yep. Whoop. Up an onion. And now just repeat this step. The onion musk. Okay, now just repeat this with the other onion. What was that? Now it's time to add in the chicken thigh. Oh. This might take a while. Just put it right on top of the vegetables. Yeah. Okay, now this is what it should look like. Now let's get it back into the herbs and spices. Now it's time to get into the herbs and spices. Now let's start off with the garlic. We're going to need about 1 teaspoon of garlic. Yep, and put that right in there. 1 teaspoon of black pepper. Oop. 1 teaspoon of sea salt. That's why you want to make sure you do it over the pan. And then we want about 2.5 tablespoons of chicken base. Now we're going to want about 2.5 tablespoons of chicken base. Chicken base is really going to add most of the flavor to this. Whoop, that must be a little bit more than 1 scoop, so I'll just add. Yep. So get this right in here. Okay, now it's time for the water. Okay, now it's the time for us to add the water. I'm going to be using this big pitcher, which measures in cups. Make sure when you're always adding the water, you want to make sure you start with cold water. It's just better for the soup and it'll make it better in the long run. Yep. 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 Takes it a little time. About 3 cups, mark, and there's that. Okay, well it's time to add the heat to this soup. Now it's time for us to start adding the heat to our soup. I'm going to put it on the stove and put it on high till it starts to boil. After it's boiling, we're going to take it off and put it on simmer for about an hour and a half, or until the chicken starts falling off the bone. Make sure you put in the canned diced tomatoes before you put it on simmer. And take it off. Well, that's it. I'll come back to you after that. Now we're going to take our good frying strainer and start straining this. Make sure you have a pot that can hold as much volume as your old one. Make sure it isn't filled to the brim, or it just has so little in it. So let's start straining them in here. Yep. Look at all these very nice. Careful, it might splash a little bit on you. Okay, ooh. Let's give it a little bit of a shake. Now, since we've already strained the vegetables, we're going to get rid of them. If you cut them up nice and thin, you can already leave them in there, but since I didn't, we're going to remove them. Take all these and just throw them out very nicely. Yep. Just need to get rid of the last bit of it. Now I'll worry about the light. Now we're going to take our chicken here. We're going to cut up really nice and small, so it's easier to chew. So we're going to use our bench knife again, and then just start cutting it up. Really nice. Okay. Yep, you want to make sure it looks nice, small, and neat. Like just nice, fine chicken chum. This process might take a while, so just remember. Also, for better results, take your knife and slide it. It's better that way, so that way you're not thinking you're chopping your chicken nice and small. Fine when you're just really pushing it around, making indents. Also, did you also know that your little furry friends like Grandma's chicken tortellini soup too? See, look at that. Don't you just love it, buddy? Okay, let's finish cutting up this chicken into nice, fine little chummy chicken pieces. Yeah, really nice and thin. Okay. Once you've chopped it up good enough, you can start putting it back into the original pan. And then we're going to pour the liquid back into the rest of the broth back into the original pan. This is just going to minimize cleanup. So get all the nice pieces back in. And now we're going to pour the rest of this back in. Rest of this back in here. Okay, it might not hurt to stir it a little bit. And I'm just going to go over here and get my spoon. Just give it a nice stir. Yeah. Look at this beautiful mixture. Okay, this was our final step. There's only one final step left, and I'll come back to you with that step after this. Now it's time for us to start making our tortellinis. As you can see, I've already taken a pot, filled it halfway full with water, and put it on there to boil. And let's start adding our tortellinis. For this recipe, I'm going to be using 3 cheese tortellinis, but remember, you can use whatever kind you wish. Make sure at least you have 1 pound. Yep, alright. So, and put it in there. give this pot a nice little quick stir. And a little salt. Salt just adds a little extra flavor to this tortellinis. And you can always tell when they're ready when they start puffing up and coming to the top. You can see this happens pretty fast. Yep, look at that. But these probably should give them a little bit more time to soak. So, for about 2 to 3 minutes, and that's all there is. See, was that hard? Making chicken tortellini soup is fun, isn't it? Well, remember, this is my own personal way of doing it. Feel free to change the recipe however you wish. Add more or less of something, or change it completely. But wasn't it pretty fun? Yeah. So why don't we put the finishing touches on, shall we? Let's add some tortellinis. Yep. Put all these nice tortellinis in. And add a little freshly grated cheese on top. Fresh ground's better than that kind you buy in the store. That tastes good.